Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. On behalf of our members of staff and members of council, I would like to welcome all the guests in the audience, as well as those streaming this meeting at home, to this Planning Public Council meeting. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed, and any participation in meeting procedures will become part of the public record. The recording from tonight's meeting will be published on the county's website immediately and can be viewed by selecting the streaming tab on the county's homepage. This meeting is a public meeting as required under the Planning Act and will deal with the planning applications listed on the agenda. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the County of Prince Edward on the proposed official plan amendment, you must use the sign-in sheet located at the podium or make a written request to the clerk of the County of Prince Edward. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the County of Prince Edward to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, or LPAT, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the County of Prince Edward before the proposed amendment is adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal. Deputations are limited to 10 minutes each. If there are no identified deputations on an application, committee will proceed directly to the recommended motion without a staff overview. The Committee of the Whole will consider and vote on each application separately, immediately following any staff remarks and comments from the applicant and/or any member of the public. Please note that there is a potential that matters raised at the public meeting may result in the written staff recommendation being amended verbally at the meeting. Motions that receive a 2/3 majority vote in favor of the staff recommendation will be approved and final at tonight's meeting. Motions that do not receive a 2/3 majority vote in favor of the staff recommendation will be referred to staff for further information or deferred to either the next Planning Public Council, and determination will be made at that time if further public notice is required, or to the next council meeting for a final decision. As a matter of housekeeping, to exit the building in the event of fire, please use the stairs through which you, or up which you came to this chamber, or to the left through the committee room. Please do not use the elevator. And if I could ask everybody to either turn off or mute their cell phones. Now, if I could have a motion to confirm the agenda. Mover and seconder, Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Could read that, please.
Yes, this is a Roberts-Bailey motion that the agenda for the Planning Public Council meeting of December 11, 2019 be confirmed.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that carries. Moves to item 3, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Does anybody have anything to declare? Seeing none, that moves us to, we'll move into Committee of the Whole to consider staff reports and hear deputations. If we could have, if I could have a mover and a seconder to move it. Councillor Harper, seconded by Councillor McNaughton.
So Harper McNaughton motion that the council now move into Committee of the Whole to consider staff reports with respect to the planning applications as listed on this agenda, receive deputations and submissions related to those planning applications, and make recommendations on each application.
Thank you. All those in favor? That carries. Councillor Forrester, I am turning over the meeting to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, we'll start off with planning staff to confirm that public notice for today's meeting was provided in accordance with all Planning Act requirements.
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 5.1, David Hawthorn and Gloria Hawthorn. Planning staff, any additional comments?
Through the chair, no, we do not.
No. Is the applicant or agent here?
Yes, my name is Sheila Mathers. I'm the lawyer for the applicants.
Are you in agreement with all the conditions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak on this application? No? Okay, seeing none. Okay, I'll have to put this on the floor. Councillor Roberts? Councillor Hirsch? Can you read the motion, please?
Just waving to the audience. Yes, thank you. That the report of the Development Services dated December 11, 2019 regarding consent file number B64-18 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z53-18 be received. The consent file number B64-18 David Hawthorn and Gloria Hawthorn for lands located in Part Gore C, Part 1, 47R, 2983, Ward 6, Sophiasburgh, be approved subject to the following conditions. And those are conditions 1 through 11, that zoning amendment file number Z53-18 David and Gloria Hawthorn for lands located in Part Gore C, Part 1, 47R, 2983, Ward 6, Sophiasburgh, be approved.
Okay, any questions from committee? No? Okay. I'll put this to a vote. All in favor? That passes with 2/3. Okay, 5.2, Harold and Vera Bratten. Planning staff, any additional comments?
Through the chair, no, we do not.
Is the applicant or agent present? Could you state your name, please?
Harold Bratten with my wife Vera. I'm the applicant.
Are you in agreement with the conditions?
I am, yes.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this application? No, seeing none. We'll get this put on the floor. Councillor Bailey. Councillor Murchison.
This is a Bailey-Margetson motion that the report of development services dated December 11, 2019 regarding consent file number B51-19 be received, that consent file number B51-19 Harold Bratten and Vera Bratten for lands located in Part Lot 3, Plan 5, Part 3, 47R 8005, Ward 8, North Marysburgh, be approved subject to the following conditions 1 through 8. That consent file number B51-19, Harold Bratten and Vera Bratten for lands located in Part Lot 3, Plan 5, Part 3, 47R 8005, Ward 8, North Marysburgh, be approved.
Okay, any questions from committee? Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor? Passes with 2/3. Okay, 5.3, Nicholas Dubois. Planning staff, is there any additional comments?
Through the chair, no, we do not.
Okay, is the applicant or agent present?
Yep.
Could you come forth and state your name, please?
Nicholas Dubois, the applicant, and I accept the terms.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this application? Seeing none. Okay, we'll get this motion put on the floor. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Murchison. Could you read it, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a Margetson motion that the report of the Development Services dated October 16, 2019 regarding consent files numbers B52-19 and B53-19 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z50-19 be received, that consent file numbers B52-19 and B53-19 Nicholas Dubois for lands located in Part Lot 23, Concession 2 southwest of Greenpoint, Part 1, 47R 5900 T/WPE 75258, Ward 6, there we go, Sophiasburgh, be approved subject to the following conditions, and they are 1 through 11. That zoning amendment file numbers Z50-19 Nicholas Dubois for lands located in Part Lot 23, Concession 2 southwest of Greenpoint, Part 1, 47R 5900 T/WP 75258, Ward 6, Sophiasburgh, be approved.
Okay, any questions from committee? Seeing none, call the vote. All in favor? That passes with 2/3. Okay, 5.4. Gilbert Provost and Pauline Josie. Planning staff, is there any additional comments?
Through the chair, no.
Is the applicant or agent present?
My name is Keith Watson from Watson Land Surveyors. I'm here as the agent. The owners couldn't make it tonight because of the storm. I agree to all the conditions except condition 5. I just wondered if we could look at not doing a drainage plan on the retained property. The retained property, if you could put the sketch up, it might show a bit better. Oops, sorry.
So you're okay with everything there?
Everything
In a minute, I'm
else
just going to get
except for the
planning staff to
retain.
do an overview on this, okay? So just give me a second here. Is that the only condition you had to this point?
Exactly.
Okay. Is there anybody from the audience that has any questions on this application? No? Okay, I'm going to ask planning staff if you could do an overview on this, especially regarding number 5.
Through the chair, maybe I'll direct this question to John Gooding, our engineer who reviewed it for the drainage matter.
Thank you.
Through the chair, we recognize that it is a large parcel of property being retained. What this opportunity, the grading plan gives us is development controls on it, so that if there's any kind of complaints or identified water courses from a public highway that emanate onto the property, we can get an easement or like I said, development controls in order to regulate that. So in order, recognizing this is a big parcel and with other ones as well, what we've started to do is identify areas that are not to be disturbed and just limiting that on the drawing and just focusing on areas that are being developed. And that way it limits the amount of surveying required in order to do these grading plans.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask, does committee have any questions of the agent right now? We're going to get a chance, we'll put this on the floor, we can have staff questions, but if anyone has a question of the agent, you can ask them right now. Yes.
No, this is for staff.
No? Okay, so we're going to wait, we're going to come back there. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to get this motion put on the floor. Councillor Maynard, Councillor Bullock, will you second this? Okay, Councillor Maynard, you can read it, please.
Maynard, Bullock motion, sorry, I slipped into the paper. That report of the development services dated December 11, 2019 regarding consent file numbers B5419 and B5519 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z51-19 be received, that consent file B54-19, B5619, Gilbert Perveau and Pauline Joycey for lands located in part lot 105, 106, part of the road allowance between lot 106 and lot 107, concession 3, part 1 to 3, 47R, 2824, Ward 4, Marysburgh be approved, subject to the following conditions, 1 through 10. That zoning amendment file number Z5119, Gilbert Perveau and Pauline Joycey for lands located in part lot 105, 106, part of the road allowance between lot 106, lot 107, concession 3, part 1 to 3, 47R, 2824, Ward 4, Marysburgh be approved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to take some questions. Councillor Markson, you had a question on this to start?
Yes, this is to Mr. Gooding, and what I understand you said, John, was that, excuse me, you're simplifying the process for a drainage plan on a large parcel?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So in this case here, I'd have them identify the water course. I wouldn't bother with the outlying lands. We would allow contours. We wouldn't necessarily want detailed surveyed field data. I mean, a contour from aerial maps would be acceptable, and have it where we just focus around the structures to make sure there's adequate drainage around that structure.
Because that property's been developed for a long time, and it can't be severed again, and that water course is always, that's been there forever. I just don't know what we're going to achieve, but if you feel it's necessary, I would go with your recommendation. I'm on the fence because I can see how it could be onerous to have them do something, then it's not really benefiting the municipality that much here in this case, or the proponent.
Do you have any response to that? Or?
Well, pardon me, in this case here, you're correct. I mean, with the fact that there's already an established water course. However, if this wasn't identified, providing a survey on the retained property might identify that for the county and allow us to get in there and get an easement. in order to provide our county road an outlet. I agree in this case, it may not be necessary. However, lot controls would benefit in the sense that if an additional structure was permitted on the property, we would have the regulations now in place that they'd have to amend that grading plan and again review drainage that might not be triggered if a grading plan wasn't already on title.
You and Paul? Yes.
But you're not proposing an easement over the watercourse in favor of the municipality?
No, in this case, it would have riparian rights. So the watercourse would be established and you wouldn't need an easement.
Thank you.
Councillor Nyman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I understand, there's already a water course there, and it's been there for years. I don't understand what you're trying to achieve when you say you want to identify it, I guess. If it's already there and it's been there for years and years, people know it's there. What are we identifying?
Through the chair, you're correct. I mean, this one, we do know there's a water course there, and some we don't. In some, it might be a ditch that hasn't been identified as a water course, but it takes road water and onto the property and maybe eventually connects into an outlet. So in that case, the grading plan would recognize that, and it could be buried in a forest where perhaps a site visit by staff wouldn't identify that. So in that case, then I would get the results back, and then it would require for an easement over that identified drainage path if we need it. In this case, where the benefit would be is it gives us development controls that if the property changes use or there's disputes between the retained and the severed owners or adjacent neighbors, the county now has a tool because I can go back and say, you have a grading plan on file, you must do A, B, and C to bring it back to the way it originally was approved to. Because even if the individual doesn't build a structure, it doesn't stop that person from altering grades or whatnot.
Follow up?
Yes, yes, please. So I'm not quite sure which way that water course runs. I'm thinking to Ellis Bay. So I'm not following because the road is on the south side, and any water that goes in there is going to head south anyways, not north. So is the water course right now, and I believe the term is not is a prescribed easement right now. If that water's been going there and has been for a number of years, it's a prescribed easement. You don't have to have it on title. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I just don't understand why we're asking for it, I guess.
Through the chair, in this situation, I mean, with the water course identified in the property and the county not needing an outlet, and it's known because everything's heading towards Wellers Bay, not onto the subject property. If an exemption was going to be applied, this one would be suitable for that. If development controls weren't necessary, being that the property is not going to be further developed, and council's confident that future alterations of the site probably don't need additional regulation through a grading plan.
Okay, Councillor Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, then I'll move an amendment to remove item 5. I mean, this is an old house in the back, right? It is an identified water course, so you can't interfere with a water course. Like there's other mechanisms in play to protect us. The water clearly travels underneath a large culvert to the bay. I mean, it's not. It's a pretty defined water course. So if I can get a seconder, I'll move to remove condition number 5.
Councillor Maynard.
Just to be clear, sorry, we're not asking to have the
the retained.
On the severed end, it's on the retained only.
Yes, on the retained.
30-acre parcel.
So whatever the wording, I'll let staff.
Why do we need a severed?
And I think staff can. Sorry, if staff would like to provide the wording. Yeah.
Are you guys all clear on that?
Yeah, through the chair, it just means
in
in condition 5, the reference in the first line,
Right.
and retain removed, and the word lot with the S taken off. That's all that's required.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other questions then from committee? McNaughton. So a Maynard McNaughton motion? Okay, so I'm going to call for the vote as amended. So this will automatically, I'm assuming, go to council now for the final vote.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it passes with a 2/3 majority as amended.
Even with the amended, I thought
it
once was changed.
won't
Okay.
have to go back to council.
Okay, so I'll call the vote then? On the amended motion, yes.
On the amendment.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, so that passes with 2/3. Okay.
Yeah, as amended.
Now, and now we'll vote on the main motion as amended.
The main motion as amended, okay. Everybody ready? All in favor?
See, there's the old house. It's way back there.
Okay, it's 5.5. Brendan Conley and Lisa Conley. Planning staff, any additional information?
Through the chair, no, we do not.
Is the applicant present?
Keith Watson again from Watson Land Surveyors. Again, the requirement for a drainage plan on the retained. The house, it's sitting on a 50-acre piece of property. The house is 200 meters from the road. Recently had a building permit on it. This one is one that a type of application on the two severed properties is something that Mr. Gooding was mentioning, that the ditch along the road may require an outlet, and there is a stream or an existing creek at the back of the two severances, and one of the conditions is looking to get an easement to that creek, and we would certainly do that, but I just don't see the necessity to do a drainage plan on 50 acres of property that's drained naturally for the last thousands of years.
I think I'm going to ask the planning staff to do an overview on this one here, just so we have a better understanding.
Through the chair, so this is a 2-acre, they're proposing to sever two 2-acre parcels. As you can see, there's a water course that runs through them, which is environmental protection lands. From the get-go, at the pre-consultation, we noticed that our current zoning has the EP lands marked incorrectly, so we had Quinte Conservation go out and ground truth, and they flagged, and so now it is, we're rezoning it to be the proper zoning. And then if you want an overview regarding the condition with log grading, I'm going to give it to John to give you more information on that.
Through the chair, so there's a water course. It looks like apparently there's 2 water courses on the property. When we get the plans, we don't get a grading plan included with the files. So to identify where we might need a 10-meter easement to provide drainage if needed, usually at the grading plan is when we get a more detailed look at that. If the applicant's willing to review that condition on both the severed and retained, and if it's necessary or not, I think it would be acceptable to omit the grading plan for the retained, understanding that it's already developed.
Did you have a question for staff or for staff? Okay, well, wait till we put this on the floor. I just want to get this overview here. Was there any questions for the applicant from the committee right now? Could you come back up? Councilor Weston?
Keith, if we determine along the frontage of the 2 severed and the retained that it would be best to drain to the existing creek on the retained.
Yes. Yes.
Could we see, that's what this motion does here, is it gives us the flexibility to put that outlet on all of the 3.
Yes.
Without surveying the 50 acres. I mean, this has to be practical.
Yes.
So I can see in this case where leaving the retained in might work to facilitate what we're trying to do here.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm kind of supportive of the motion or the condition as it's written in this case, but it has to be practical. So if you need to grant an easement, it could be on the retained here.
But I think that's what they're talking about in condition 7.
Okay.
So if we are certainly would like, they're asking for an outlet.
So they already know where they want it.
And they're saying to be on the west limit of the west severance. And we're hoping that we could move it over to the west limit of the retained out of the road. That's where he's built an existing driveway and built a ditch along the driveway that would almost work that way now. And as long as we can go out with the engineers and to their satisfaction is completed, and
I'm hoping we can sort it out. Yeah.
But it's the only thing is we will be putting on title a drainage plan for the 2 severed properties. But I just don't want to put on title for the huge piece of property a drainage plan. I just don't understand what that would.
No, and I know what you're saying. It could be that easement for drainage, though, is on the retained.
Is on that plan, certainly, yeah.
So it could be restricted to the
front portion
between the creek north to the road or something like that. Yeah, which I think would help the staff get what they want. So that's my comment.
Councillor Nyman, you had a question? Okay. Any other questions for the agent? No. Okay, thank you, Keith.
Thanks.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this application? Could you please state your name, please?
My name is Jim Moore. Jim Moore. I own the property immediately beside and across the road from the property in question.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not objecting to the amendment, and unfortunately I'm hard of hearing, and I couldn't understand what Mr. Conley's representative had said. But my concern was that Consecon Creek runs through that property plus my property. And some time ago, we'd received notification there couldn't be any development within 100 meters of that creek. And it became an issue again when the solar farm was built next to us there. But not my concern, because if this was approved, I'd be looking at putting lots along Jericho too, but I was under the impression right along that it wouldn't be allowed.
Okay. Just hang on a second. Staff, could you answer that by any chance?
Through the chair, Quinte Conservation went out and they put building envelopes on this property. It's on the as an attachment of the report, and it shows that each property does have a 0.1 hectare building envelope on each severed lot.
So you might want to come in and see planning staff.
I'm sorry?
You might want to come in and see planning staff later on for your concerns there.
So this has been waived at this time?
I can't say that for sure. You might want to have a conversation with planning staff.
Like, I'm not opposing the amendment for Mr. Conley at all.
Okay.
It's just that I was really curious when I received this notice.
Okay. Well, this is sort of separate of what we're looking at right now, so maybe you might want to go in and see planning staff with your questions regarding your property.
Okay. Thank you kindly.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay, let's get this put on the floor. So we're going to have some questions. Councillor, anyone like to put on the floor? Councillor Roberts? Councillor Nyman? Could you read that?
Thank you, Jamie. This is a Roberts-Nyman motion that the report of development services dated December 11, 2019 regarding consent file numbers B59-19 and B60-19 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z55-19 be received. That consent files number B59-19 and B60-19, Brendan and Lisa Conley for lands located in Part Lot 53, Concession 1, west of Greenpoint, as in PE 105639, except PE 126768, S/T PE 21383, Ward 6, Sophiasburgh, be approved, subject to the following conditions, and those are 1 through 12. And that zoning amendment file number Z56-19 Brendan and Lisa Connolly for lands located in Part Lot 53, Concession 1 west of Greenpoint, as in P 105639, except PE 126768, S/T P 21383, Ward 6, Sophiasburgh, be approved.
Okay, questions, Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. thought I heard that if the applicant was in favor of the easement, then staff would be okay with taking the retained part of that, or retained word out. Is that what I heard? Because if that's correct, then
That's sorry, through the chair, that's correct. However, they're still going to have to look at the grading on the retained and the severed in order to determine if that's the best location. And I think my understanding is they wanted to look at that in case there was opportunity to maybe relocate it. So the fact that they were looking at the grading information anyway, and we're only going to limit it to the north side of the property, not the rest of the vacant undisturbed parcel. I didn't understand. I didn't think it was going to be an issue for them to look at that.
As long as we don't have to register a separate drainage plan on the...
Excuse me?
I'm sorry. Through the chair. Yes. Just as long as we don't have to register a separate drainage plan on the retained, we'll certainly look at the drainage at the retained at the front towards that creek, and perhaps looking at moving the easement or where you want the easement along the front. And like I said, we'll take measurements, topographic measurements there to find where the best place to put the easement. But I just don't want to have to draw.
I'm just going to give this a minute more because it sounds like we're getting into discussions on what we'd like to do. So I'd like to hear more from.
Yep. So just to
follow up, yes.
Yep. So just when the time comes, I'll be making a motion to remove the retained part of that, the retained word, when it's time.
Councilor Markison.
I'm going to also suggest we amend condition 7 to the applicant convey a 10-meter wide drainage easement along either the severed or retained subject lands between Jericho Road, which captures that we want a 10-meter easement, but we're not determining that it's on the west side at this point.
That's correct.
Yeah, and also I agree with Brad that on the previous condition 5, we can register the drainage plan on the severed lots only, with the provision of 7 indicating that we have the opportunity to put it on the retained parcel. Does that make sense to staff?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay.
That's okay. Is there any other councillors that want to talk about this before I look for the motion from Councillor Markison? No. Councillor Nyman, does this capture what you want to do too? So we can go in and you can second Councillor Markinson's motion? Okay, can you just clarify that again? So
Yeah, so it's an amendment to condition 5 to remove retained prior to endorsing the deed for the severed lots. So and retained should be removed from that one. And then on condition 7, the applicant convey a 10-meter wide drainage easement along either the severed or retained subject lands between Jericho Road allowance and the water course to the county for the purposes of drainage outlet to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services. Does that work for staff? Good.
Catalina, you got that?
Can I just read it?
Yes.
Okay. So that condition number 5 be amended to read as follows. Prior to the endorsing of the deed for the severed lots, the Director of Development Services, so all we're removing is the wording for the retained, what was it? I already removed it. It's from the retained lots. We're just removing and retained lots.
And retained, not lots.
And retained, okay. And then that condition 7 be amended to read, the applicant convey a 10-meter wide drainage easement along either the severed or retained subject lands between the Jericho Road allowance and water course, and so forth.
Okay, did you just want to go back? Were we okay on that? Because there was a little bit of confusion there. I just want to make sure we got it right.
Me too.
Okay, so just go back again to the part that...
Number 5.
Okay.
Okay. Prior to the endorsing of the deed for the severed lots, the Director of Development Services shall indicate satisfaction with the applicant's lot grading and drainage plan prepared by a professional engineer or an Ontario land surveyor. With the thorough knowledge in the design and construction of drainage matters, The plan shall address how existing and proposed drainage will be handled and discharged to a legal and adequate outlet. The drainage plan shall be registered on the title of the lands through a consent development agreement. Should the plan reveal any drainage paths emitting to or from a public highway or public right-of-way, the applicant shall convey appropriate easements to the county to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services.
All good, Ernie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so that's Marcusson and Nyman motion, amended motion. Call the vote on that. All in favor? Okay. Now the main motion as amended. All in favor? And that passes with 2/3. Okay. We'll move on to 5.6, Jonathan Tolkien and Patricia Linders. Any additional information from the planning staff?
Through the chair, no, we do not.
Is the applicant or agent here?
Agent, Greg Logger. And by the way, that gentleman may be hard of hearing, but I am not, and I still find it very difficult to hear all of you guys around there. These guys, no problem, but your microphones don't work, just so you know.
Thank you. Are you in agreement with the conditions?
Yes, we are.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this application? Seeing none. Get this put on the floor. Councillor Bailey. Councillor Markson, could you read the motion, please?
This is a Bailey-Margetson motion that the report of Development Services dated December 11th, 2019 regarding consent file number B67-19 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z63-19 be received, that consent file number B67-19 Tolkien and Linders for lands located in Part Lot 26 Concession Bayside North Marysburgh Part 1 to 3 47R4427 S/T NM 4978 Ward 8 North Marysburgh be approved subject to the following conditions 1 through 9, that zoning amendment file number Z63-19 Tolkien and Linders for lands located in Part Lot 26 Concession Bayside North Marysburgh Part 1 to 3 47R4427 S/T NM 4978 be approved.
Any questions, committee? Councillor Nyman.
Thank you. Can you just explain the condition number 7, the 1 foot, you want to keep the 1 foot. What's the reason for that? If the road is already as wide as you can get it, or if it's what it's supposed to be?
So through the Planning Act, this lot was severed off of the this benefiting lot was severed off the retained lot in 1996. So in order to do any more configurations like a lot addition, we would have to change the lot a little bit, and we do this by taking a 1 foot reserve in order to allow them to have this lot addition. It's functionally in the Planning Act, it is to protect the severed. So if once you sever a lot, it will not merge with the retained lot. So in order to do this, we have to change it a bit to allow it to do the lot addition.
Were you looking for a follow-up?
Yeah. So the 1 foot is along the road. So what's it merging with?
So it's protecting it to not merge. So since it was severed off the lot, we put in the Planning Act, there is a tool to which allows it not to merge with the retained lot when it was severed. So now that we want to do more conveyance and do a lot addition with what was formerly a part of the lot, we need to change the severed lot a bit. And in order to do this, we take a 1 foot reserve to change the lot so it can then merge with the retained lot, the former retained lot.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That passes with 2/3. Okay, so now we're going to move to 5.7, Brian Draycroft and Laura Neal. I'm going to ask planning staff to do a review on this. Matt, do you have a review to do?
Through the chair, I've got a couple slides here that I'll present just to give an overview of as to where we are.
Thank you.
So thank you. Through the chair. So this is an application that was before the committee back in July, and the application is to rezone the property to a tourist commercial establishment, and the main uses that are being proposed include a brewery, a smokehouse, restaurant, and 10 cabins. The key map that you see on the screen indicates the proposed concept on the bottom portion, and then on the top is the general location in the vicinity of Concession Lake. So just to give a bit of an overview as to how this application originated and how we got to this point on December 11th. This application was received on March 21st of this year, and the original application included a special event center, as well as the brewery and smokehouse and the 10 cabins. The cabins were located in a slightly different location, which they are now, and I'll go through that a little bit in more detail. This application was first heard by the Planning Committee on July 17th, and we received feedback from council and the public. And at that meeting, there was a motion to refer the applications back to staff to provide additional information and to give the applicants an opportunity to host an open house. This open house occurred on September 22nd, and it was held at the Hilliard Town Hall. Following this, the applicant provided an amended concept plan, and the applications were scheduled for a meeting on November 20th. And a few days prior to that meeting, the applications were deferred at the applicant's request. So today, December 11th, we're here to review those applications again, and I'll just go through some of the revisions. So based on public feedback and I guess the desire of the applicant, the event center itself has been removed from the concept plan. We wanted to note that special events would still be permitted on the site. It is currently a permitted use, provided that it follows the guidelines in the zoning bylaw and our special events bylaw. But the event center itself has been removed from the concept. The existing cabins were relocated so that they will now be farther to the east from where they were before. They had proposed a 13-meter setback. In the previous concept, that concept has been increased to 55 meters, 55.6 actually. The setback from the wetland boundary of Concession Lake has been increased to 50 meters, and the parking area has been limited in size, partly because of the removal of the event center. So the concept before you is what has been revised, and the notable areas are the location of the cabins in this area here, the additional setback between the westerly lot line and the first cabin, the additional setback from the wetland boundary, and the reduction in parking area in this area. The event space had previously been proposed on the eastern side of the property, and as I said, it's been removed. So I wanted to put up the draft zoning bylaw on the screen just to walk through some of the key points in the bylaw. Staff have drafted a bylaw in an attempt to mitigate some of the concerns that have been brought to our attention. I'll just walk through some of the yellow highlights. There is an existing livestock facility on the opposite side of the road, on the south side, and so the bylaw itself incorporates a 233-meter setback from that facility. All structures will be located at a minimum of 50 meters from Consecon Lake Marsh. All structures will be located outside of the floodplain of Consecon Lake. All outdoor special events shall conform to Section 4.36 of the zoning bylaw. And then the following provisions relate to the removal of the holding symbol, which is proposed in this bylaw, and they would need to be addressed at the time of site plan control. So an updated environmental impact study, an updated archaeological study, an elevation survey delineating the floodplain of Consecon Lake, and the final provision, which is that a site plan control agreement be entered into. This slide, what we did here is we were trying to illustrate a bit of a conflict between the environmental impact study, which had delineated the wetland boundary and the M&R wetland boundary that we had on file. And the EIS that was submitted had proposed that this area here where my cursor is the wetland boundary, and my understanding is that this was field truth with Quinte Conservation and flagged. However, we were not able to confirm that prior to this meeting, and so we're maintaining the existing marsh boundary, which was proposed by the M&R mapping, the original mapping. So we're maintaining the existing environmentally protected area and not revising that. Regarding MDS itself, the minimum distance separation formula required between livestock facilities and proposed new uses. At the July 17th meeting, we got into this a little bit. There are agricultural buildings located at 5818 County Road 1, and there are a series of older agricultural buildings and a former livestock facility. However, staff did determine that it is not currently a livestock facility, and we've based that opinion on current NDS guidelines, and so we're fairly confident. We're confident that by determining this not a livestock facility, that there's no requirement for an MDS setback from this barn. And the barn we're speaking of in particular is this building right here. These other buildings are most definitely storage sheds. The barn itself is used as dry storage currently. However, we do acknowledge that it had been formerly used as a livestock facility, and staff have gone to the extent of doing an MDS2 calculation, which would be applied if that barn ever were to become a livestock facility again. And based on that analysis, an MDS2 setback requirement would be 100 meters, and the actual distance is 198 meters. So even if that barn were to become a livestock facility again, it would still meet MDS requirements. The barn located at 5738 County Road 1 does have livestock in it, in addition to a few other uses, an existing electrical business, a horse riding arena, and my understanding it's been used for the housing of 4 horses and 15 cattle. The MDS setback that has been suggested is 233 meters. It's based on the existing situation, which is what I just described, and the actual distance is 283 meters. So this setback meets the MDS guidelines as they're stated in the current MDS guideline document. So that's where we are at this point in summary. So I know the applicant's agent has a presentation and some points he'd like to make as well. So we'll answer any questions following that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. At this point, is the applicant or agent here? I understand you want to make a presentation, so come on up.
Pardon me, this is old technology. I don't have it electronically. And
you know how you write something out and you read it over and read it over and then you look at it? Don't ask me where I got the address of 5228. It doesn't exist. I don't even know where it is. So that's kind of foolish, but so be it. So notwithstanding, I don't know what I'm talking about in terms of location. We're talking about the property on the side of Concession Lake. And if we could just sort of whip through the slides I've just handed out. Oh, sorry, yes. And the button's on. Okay. First slide, my colleague has already laid out the history and the changes. We've deleted the event space. We've pushed the cabins further away from the wetland with minimum 50 meters. Proposed land use. Right now we're talking about a 40-acre parcel of land with roughly 1,260 feet on County Road 1. We're talking about a restaurant, brewery house, smokehouse, and 10 240 square feet cabins. Currently, what we have there is we have the single detached dwelling with a pool and accessory, and a storage building under construction. And I need to note, just to put in passing, all necessary applications and permits have been submitted and approved and issued by the municipality. No work has proceeded beyond what has been approved. So if we go on, sorry?
Sorry, I missed, could you state your name there?
Sorry, you think I've never done this before. Spencer Hutchison, and I'm Senior Associate Planner with RFA Planning out of Belleville. And I spoke here in July. Sorry about that. If we carry on, we have 3 concept plans for the cabins, because we all have definitions of what a cabin is, what a cottage is. So one, to lock into your minds what we're talking about. We're not talking multi-generational, multi-room cottages. There's 3 versions, 3 designs. First one's 175 square feet, and then there's the floor plan. If you notice, it's only a double bed and a possible pull-out sofa. Another version, kind of like a chalet, it's 210 square feet. It has sort of a loft, again, double bed, chairs on the down floor, and a third design, bit of a peaked roof, 185 square feet. So just the 10 cabins would be versions of those. So we're limited. They're almost like kits. The construction's very minimal on the environment because they're self-contained and on a pad. There'll be no vehicular access. It'll only be walking trail from the parking lot to these units. Then we carry on page 9, the view of the building on the property at this hour, and the one that has all the permits. So picture 9 is from the road, 10 is from the east side, picture 11 is facing the lake on the north side, and picture 12 is the inside, and these pictures are all taken Sunday afternoon, 3 days ago. So if you look at picture 9, construction is halted because we're here to talk about what may or what you may not allow inside. So just to be clear, everything's been done through your staff in the building department, and work has not gone beyond what permits have been asked for. Now, if we go to 13 and you pull that one out, this is a picture taken from the front corner of that building. And it's a panorama from north to east, and you see some of the picnic tables in front of the building, the fields in the far right in the distance. You can see the back of their house and the Baldwin barn across the road on the other side in the distance. The point of this picture is all this land is going to stay as it is, agricultural, rural, maybe grow some hops. So the vast majority of the 40 acres is going to stay as it is. It's still going to be rural looking. You drive around, you drive down the highway, this whole area you see has no development plan for it. It's It's just going to stay as it is and have some sorts of crops on it. We go to 14. I would argue we're talking about a technical matter, not a policy matter. You know, there's a provincial policy statement, official plan, which are policies. In my original report submitted back in the spring and in my planning colleagues' reports, we've talked about PPS and have indicated that both groups feel it meets PPS, and I'm going to talk about the official plan. And then you drill down to the zoning bylaw and the site plan, and that's basically what we're going to be talking tonight, zoning bylaw and site plan. So I just want to make the point, your approved municipal policies established in the official plan allow the use of this property that we're talking about and set the criteria for that use. No official plan amendment is required. No policy change is being asked for. We're operating within your policies. If we go to the next page, this is the schedule from your official plan to do with Schedule D, Tourism and Recreational Plan. And you see the subject property outlined in blue with a label and a heavy brown line circling around. And as it says, that's a tourism corridor. So your county road on which this property is situated is a tourism corridor. So if we go to the next page, we have the words from the official plan under section 333, on slide 16 if I can call it that. Your policy, in order to stimulate greater tourism, the official plan identifies and protects and enhances those areas of the county having the greatest potential for tourism. And it says, as shown on Schedule D. And we go to C, policy. Tourism development shall be encouraged in suitable locations, particularly in the tourism corridors on Schedule D. You've identified as tourism corridor. Carrying on, page 17. This land, the vast majority of this land is designated shoreland in the official plan with a bit of environmental at the north. So all the development we're proposing is on land designated shoreland. So policy 423, the permitted uses in the shoreland designated shall include, not may include, probably could include, shall include. A, go through that, underline cottages, establishments, or cabins. C, blah, 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 or eating establishment. So your policy says this is an area for cabins and for eating establishments. But there are criteria, so we go on to slide 18, and my colleague has touched upon them, and the calculations have done. The shoreline says, but you got to make sure that MDS works. Subject to, in accordance to the policies, all development will be required to meet the MDS. In our reports, both the first report and the second report, and in my colleague's report, we've crunched the numbers. There's a map in the report, supplementary report from myself on December 3rd, shows the arcs of the two buildings, and the numbers. And just to confirm, pages 19, 20, and 21 are all the Baldwin barn, just to see what we're talking about. So there's the west end of the Baldwin barn with 3 truck entrances. Far left, this long riding ring, horse training center. And then a third picture just to show up. There's your loading doors and 2 doors that say office and stable door. Picture 22, again taken Sunday, shows from the driveway in front of Baldwin barn, northwest towards the barn in the distance. So that gives you, we talk numbers, well here's actual reality as a picture would show. Standing there looking in the distance, there's the building. Or picture 23 is the reverse. Standing at the front of the barn looking back past their house, and behind their house across the road are the Baldwin barn. And then we go 24, 25, 26 are all the barn to the west on the south side of the county road. A different generation, a different state of barn. Yes, 22 decades ago was used for livestock. As far as I know, never been since, and more of a storage building. Figure 27 shows the corner of the subject property across the fields to the barn. The barns that we were just looking at are over the back of this picture, across the road and further to the west. But this is the corner of where on the north side of the road, the subject property abuts against the neighbor's property. And again, you look at all that field, it's to stay. It's going to be cropped, whatever. Again, one of the policies is keep this as a rural area. This project, when completed, will have the one barn-like structure. Everything in front will remain as fields with some sort of crop on it. Figure 28 shows the picture from the front of the barn on the subject property back to the barns that we were looking at. And I put a little red circle. You have to look closely, but in the trees, on the back of the trees is the barn. So just to give you a feel, the setbacks we're talking about, the existing. Figure 29, we have some commercial uses in the shoreline and some policies. So it basically says you need a zoning bylaw and a site plan control, which we totally agree with and understand. Then we get on to section 30, which is environmental protection. Before development is allowed on lands abutting environmental protection, development shall be reviewed for the impacts. As noted, we did early on submit an EIS, and it's been on file for most of this year, or from April on. This development will be set back from any wetland, and we'll get to some pictures in a moment. The precise boundary, next page on 31, you have a section in your official plan to do with provincially significant wetlands. The precise boundary of a PSW shall be determined by the Ministry of Natural Resources. Development as defined shall not be permitted within the provincially significant wetland. I was on the phone yesterday afternoon with Paul McCoy at Quinte Conservation, and I wanted to firm up. And further to his letter of June 28th this year from previous circulation, staff had gone to the site. Staff had flagged the edge of the shore, the edge of the wetland, and they left little plastic ties in the edge. So they know where it is. They've confirmed it in the field. As my colleague noted, that is verbal, but it can be followed up in writing with a subsequent letter. Policy C says completion of an environmental study. Development of lands within 40 meters shall be completion of environmental study. We have submitted an environmental study. Page 32 is just a list of the studies that we've submitted. We did a planning rationale back in March. We did a supplementary one a week ago. We did a rural design brief. Other consultants did a traffic impact study, hydrogen, servicing assessment, stormwater management, environmental impact, and a stage 1 archaeological. And we also have provided information on water purification systems. So, picture 38 is a panorama. This is a hands-on exercise. If you want to rip off the last page, 42, it has arrows that shows where all these pictures are. So there's the concept plan that was on your screen, same one, but I've put in a bunch of black lines and numbers. Those correspond to the slide. So I down on the county road is 22, if that's the picture from Baldwin down. 27, that's where it was at the corner, and then so on. So picture 33, and somehow my squibble Might look like a 35 to you, but it's the arrow pointing from the orange building towards the north, towards the lake. So when we stand at the barn or the structure out there, this is what we see from left to right. Far left is the hedgerow tree line along the abutting property to the west. There's vegetation, there's some trees, there's a walkway, and there's more trees and some scrub. And then the beginning, you can clearly see the outline of the field and where there's been human operation. And in the distance, you can see the water ice covered as of Sunday. If we go to 34, because in the comments there's a talk about a walkway, docks. 34 is existing, and it's a sort of viewing platform, and I know plywood, I couldn't quite tell, where you could put 3 or 4 Adirondack chairs, and this walkway that goes through the wetland or the marsh and ends up at the water's edge. So that already exists. That intrusion has already happened. There's no desire to add to it. There's no desire. I'm going to speak maybe out of turn, but this is a cabin project for people who want the environment, birds and nature. It's not one for boats and canoes and using the water, because it's not the best shoreline for that. So in one of the comments, there was comments about docks. No, that's not the interest. It's off the shoreline. Picture 35. If you look in the right corner, far right corner of 35, you'll see the wooden, some posts and some structures. That is the structure in 34, the previous page. You see those uprights and cross posts and stuff. I don't know if that was some sheltered space beside this deck. But anyway, if you can reference that, that's at the far right of photograph 35. Circled is a stake. That stake is 30 meters back from the edge of the wetland. The edge of where the Conservation Authority said. There's some trees and defined vegetation right at the shoreline. That stake, and on page 36, there's a blow up. You can see the stake behind the tree. The lake is to the left of this picture. So that's 30 meters back. And just to give you a reference, picture 37 is sort of looking east from that location. You see the grass, then in the distance you see the wetland and then the open water behind. 38 shows you standing near the shoreline looking south back to the structure. And what this shows is a significant grade difference. So this property, the development is well above any flood condition. You can see just the slope, and as anybody who's visited the site, the property keeps sloping up until you come to County Road 1. County Road. All right, 39, again from the official plan, site plan policies. Site plan control policies, objectives. Ensure adherence to proper development standards. I think that's probably the biggest issue we're talking about, standards. How are we going to develop this so that it reflects the location and the environment? You can do that using the policies or the structure of a site plan agreement. Minimize land use incompatibility. It says between new and existing development. I don't want to classify the wetland as development, but basically the principle is we're going to minimize land use incompatibility. And H, to direct the proper placement, massing, and design of buildings. So a site plan agreement is a legally enforced document registered on title of the subject lands where the municipality gets to say, these are where the units are going to be. This is how we're going to minimize land use incompatibility and ensure proper development standards. So I'll just wrap up with comments. Page 40, an EIS was prepared and submitted. Quinte Conservation have flagged the wetland boundary. There is no development proposed within 50 meters of the wetland. The restaurant, brew house, smokehouse, as you can see, is well clear of any wetland and up in the field. They are small, two-person cabins, and they are set back from the wetland. In the documentation, EcoView undertook a private peer review of our applicant's EIS. Their review has not indicated an objection, but has provided suggestions and refinements to improve the data to ensure a better development plan. And by that I mean on page 41, they've suggested a qualified biologist oversee construction to make sure contractors don't wander off into areas that they shouldn't. I mean, this can be achieved with orange fencing and other things, but another way is to have someone on site. They say in preparation of a migration strategy to protect any wildlife habitat if found. It's our submission. There is no habitat this far back from the water and the edge of the wetland. There's already a walkway through the wetland to open water, and there'll be no docks. Archaeological assessment has been undertaken, phase 1. Phase 2 and 3 will be undertaken and will be in the site plan. Those aren't deal breakers. I mean, it's a matter of ascertaining, is there something there, and then properly protecting it. Site plan process will ensure all concerns are addressed and legally locked into place. Your draft zoning bylaw has sort of 3 parts. It has the technical requirements. It sets us back, tells us how big our footprints are, so we all know what we're talking about, and it minimizes the impact. There's a requirement for some technical documentation to confirm details for site plan, and then it includes the H provision to ensure that the site plan is done, is registered on title, and you have a document that's secured to say this is how you're going to develop. So I would just like to say we're talking about I'm getting too old for this. We're not talking policy, we're talking the nuts and bolts of development, I would argue, and I believe this project does meet all the technical requirements of situating brewhouse, pub, and the 10 cabins on this property. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Wait a minute. Any questions from committee? Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. Just out of curiosity, out of the, I think you said there was 40 acres. And how much of the 40 acres are you looking to develop?
Yeah, funny enough, that was the thought I came as I was driving down. I mean, there's a limit on the size of the orange block. If you look in the bylaw, it's limited. A bit of parking in front, another parking area, and these 10 cabins. I'm going to say this little corner, I don't think even 20%.
Way less. Sorry.
Way less than 20%.
Way less.
But like I say, everything to the right side that I showed on that one panorama is going to stay as agriculture. The front southwest corner is all product related to on-site. So there's a twisty road, a parking area, the structure that we've already seen, and 10 of the cabins. Yeah, I didn't run the numbers.
Any other questions? Yeah. Councillor Markison.
Yes, thank you. Spencer?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for that. I agree it's not a policy matter. It's getting the technical details right so that this council can support it.
Yep.
I talked to the Conservation Authority myself, and Mark Boone and Tim Trustin were there because there wasn't a permit issued by the Conservation Authority for the shore well, and that's the reason they were there. And they did a few flags on the wetland, but by no means did they flag the whole wetland. And they also said in their letter, dated June 28th, that the boundary should be marked in the field and accurately reflected on all future site plans and completed by a surveyor. And they're not sure why the boundary, as the consultant provided, was different than what was in the M&R provincially significant wetland report. So I'm wondering, Spencer, what value is this concept plan in regard to what is actually going to be built there? There's no floodplain on here. The wetland boundary wasn't flagged and identified by a surveyor. There's no elevations on your contours for me to even know where they. I suggested a survey to give some information going forward. So what is the value of this concept plan? Or do we start again with a zoning in principle and then you prepare a site plan? And you said about the EIS, I see in the zoning proposed bylaw, the EIS will be done again. And I talked to Quinte Conservation about the EIS, and they had some issues with that as well. So I'm just wondering, what stage do we get to the actual site plan? Do we give the zoning? Or is there any value to this concept plan? Other than I know the building is there and the parking lot will be in front of it, that's fine. And I have no problem with the policy here. I think the development is appropriate if done right on this piece of property.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. All I can say is I phoned Quinte Conservation yesterday, and I said, you've sent a letter on June 28th, which predates everything that's happened since. There's no event space and everything else. Did you provide any update in writing? Because that's what we all want, is in writing. And Paul McCoy said, no, we have not provided anything in writing. I said, thanks. I said, my understanding is it was flagged. And I don't want to get into squabble. He said, she said. What Paul said to me was, Tim walked the property and he flagged it. I don't want to decide. I'm just saying what I was told. And whether
I understand.
And what he said, it is well defined. It's clear. You go down to, and like the pictures show, and I think you have been there. It's well defined. The edge of the water, the edge of the wetland is clearly defined on the ground. Yes, we haven't. Now you're still here, Keith out there to survey it and put the actual dimensions. But I am confident in talking to the conservation, and with the diagram there, that would be all there. But I guess to answer your question, it's a chicken egg. I mean, what we're saying is endorse the bylaws there. We're going to get you all that data. This is a project that costs money, and we're not big. They're not big developers. They're local people. They came to the county because they had this idea, and they started it. And there've been 8 months. Well, waiting with money spent. Even if they could get a clear roadmap, just do these 5 things, and we're happy. But then you're working to something. I think that's really one thing is to get. What's the last, or what are the issues? They talk about getting a survey. We have no plan. If that's what we want, then it's money well spent. So.
I understand. Can I follow up? Yeah, the iterative process I understand.
Yep.
And I hope you understand where I'm coming from as far as approving something, having enough information to feel comfortable and defend my decision when other people I have to talk to that aren't here tonight in support of it.
Yep.
And I got the floodplain map today as well from Quinte Conservation. And the floodplain map, clearly the floodplain map shows the floodplain well in on the property. And it may or may not be accurate, but it would have helped me as a decision maker knowing where that floodplain was and if the shore well is in the floodplain. And then the issues on the sewage. And perhaps all of it could be done in the future. And I'm going to ask staff eventually their comfort level with that. But I just want you to understand where I'm coming from here.
And I totally agree, and I don't want to get, but even before got into this project, I met with Tim Trustham at their offices and said, what mapping do you have for this property? And he called up the computers in his office and he said, we don't have good mapping. Again, I'm saying it, but I'm telling you, I'm not here to fib. So I don't know what mapping they have, but I was told in March, the shoreline is the line. So let's leave it at that. You need information. I don't disagree. I think it's there, it just needs to be provided. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions from committee? Okay, thank you.
I don't know if the owners would like to just say a word.
Did you have anything you want to add to that?
Am I going to regret it by saying no?
No.
All right. We'll let Spencer hold this one.
Okay. Is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak to this? Okay, come up, state your name, please.
Hello, my name is Beverly Saunders. I'm the consultant from EcoView that was hired to do a private review of the environmental impact study. And unfortunately, I think the letter that I provided on November 15th was not included in your package. So I'm going to try and summarize the points that we provided. I do quickly want to speak to the points that were spoken to, because it is in the presentation, sort of a summary of our comments. I disagree that it's not a policy issue. I just want to say that. So the comments that we've provided are actually related to demonstrating that it meets provincial policy. The question is whether it's appropriate to require the applicants to demonstrate compliance with provincial policy as a part of the holding provision, as a part of the site plan approval. That is entirely up to you. We are not entirely against the proposal. It could be appropriate for the lands. We just, as we've said, the applicant has not demonstrated yet, in our opinion, that the policies have been met. So I'll just go through what we spoke. I didn't bring a presentation, but I'll go through just the key points of what we talked about. For context, we are a land use planning and environmental planning firm, so I am an environmental professional, and so I reviewed the EIS from that perspective, and I have a past history working for conservation authorities, and so I reviewed it from that perspective as well. And we did review it in terms of all provincial policies, just to make sure that everything was caught in the zoning provision for the holding provision. So there were a number of changes. I had worked with Matt directly to make sure that those changes that were highlighted were included so that we could address some of the gaps in policy that exist. Okay? So to start, the biggest issue that we had was there was gaps in the environmental impact study. For example, there were portions, and you were actually distributed the environmental impact study, so you can see for this yourself, if you want to, on page 12 of the environmental impact study. There are a number of statements that are made that I believe to be wholly inaccurate and misrepresentative of provincial policy. Specifically, they say things like, there are no fish habitat on the development. The provincial policy requires reviewing and analyzing fish habitat within 120 meters of the development, right? So it's not accurate to say things like there's no significant wildlife habitat or no fish habitat if you haven't assessed for fish habitat. And throughout the environmental report, it says things like, we didn't assess the shoreline or Concession marsh, but we'll assume that it's there and only have a 30-meter setback. The challenge with that is, especially when it comes to significant wildlife habitat or species at risk, that sometimes 30 meters isn't what you need. Sometimes it's 50 meters, which 50 meters sounds great, which is what they've recommended, that's fine. But then it might be allowing wildlife corridors, or it might be that you need an Endangered Species Act approval, or it might be that you need to demonstrate that there's no impact. So our challenge is not that we don't think this could move forward. It's simply that they haven't done the work to demonstrate that it meets policy. I have made a number of suggestions to address that, so that's the reason that that clause in the holding provision for an updated environmental impact study has been included. Mostly, there weren't any standard surveys done for species at risk. There weren't any standard surveys done for significant wildlife habitat. And so what we are requesting is that those get done in this updated environmental impact study, which would be done as a part of the holding provision. provision. And the reason we said it would be okay for it to happen was as a part of the holding provision is because in my experience, there are ways to mitigate those things. But you can't mitigate it if you don't look for it, if you don't actually do those surveys. So that's the reason that we've asked for that. Same thing for species at risk. So I said the surveys were not completed. Nowhere in the environmental impact study does it say how they surveyed for species at risk. In fact, the statement is just, we did a site visit and didn't see any species at risk, but there's very standard protocols for looking for species at risk at certain seasons. And so those studies have to be done in order to demonstrate that you're meeting the Ministry of Environment species at risk legislation. And so we ask that those actually be completed. There was a characterization of what our recommendations were as if they were only details. Yes, we've provided options, a suite of options of how the applicant can address these comments without this application being completely denied. But there were just a number of gaps in the environmental impact study. For example, with the species at risk, in lieu of doing surveys, one of the recommendations was simply that the construction crew learn species at risk and then look for them when they do their construction, right? So these aren't what we would perceive as acceptable measures for making sure that you're addressing it, particularly when you're right adjacent to the Concession marsh. So that's the idea, that's the reason that we're bringing these forward, is we want to make sure that that gets addressed appropriately. So those are our environmental concerns. With respect to the remainder, so there was a question about noise impacts. Now that the venue is removed, I'm not concerned about that. I'm not concerned about noise impacts on wildlife. There was a statement that archaeological assessments are done and that a stage 2 and stage 3 could be done as a part of site plan. Certainly, that's true. Archaeological resources can be removed if found on the site through a stage 4. So that wouldn't prohibit this development from moving forward, but it is important that requiring that archaeological assessment be a condition of the holding provision in order to ensure that this application meets provincial policy. And then we had some concerns about stormwater management, which I believe have been addressed. And then specific concerns about erosion and sediment controls. Specifically, there were, in our opinion, ineffective erosion and sediment control recommendations in the environmental impact study. And then we also pointed out the fact that the floodplain on the property has not been delineated. As we all know, the provincial policy statement requires that all development be outside of that. But again, I recognize that it's highly likely that there's somewhere on the site where some cabins and the restaurant could be located, and so that obviously could be done as a part of the holding provision as well. So we share the same question: when is an appropriate time to pass the bylaw if some of these things haven't been demonstrated? But to your question of whether it could be answered later, sure, I think in my opinion, in general, I believe it could be, but I don't think that that's been demonstrated yet. And I think it is the responsibility of the applicant to get an adequate environmental impact study that does the appropriate surveys. So I'll leave that to you. We're not taking a strong position on this. We were hired by the Concession Lake Foundation to just take a look at it to make sure that we were meeting all of these requirements. And so I'll leave that to your decision as to what you'd like to do with that. And I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Thank you at this point.
Yep.
I'm sure we're going to be discussing this a little bit more.
Oh, can I just follow up? I didn't actually get to see what the final draft bylaw was because it was fairly small. Is it possible for us to bring that up a little more? I just want to make sure the suggestions that we provided are included. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Perfect.
Could you maybe possibly get her a copy of that?
Oh, right here. He just handed one over. Perfect. Thank you very much. And it looks like everything I suggested is there, so that's great.
Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak to this?
My name is Tammy Lloyd. First of all, let me say I'm not a resident of Prince Edward County. I am a resident and small business owner of Greater Napanee. I own a new small business in Greater Napanee called the Hive and Hearthstone. I feel compelled to speak tonight in favor of the proposed application for land and bog rezoning application. I've had the opportunity to get to know Brian and Laura since they purchased the property in Concession, and I've learned that they are very ethical and environmentally responsible people. I've learned that they have nothing but the best intentions for the land and the people of this area, and I've learned that because of their upstanding, environmentally responsible ideas and attitudes, that they are people that I want to do business with. You see, by approving their application for rezoning, you are not only positively affecting their dream of opening a business in the Concession area, you are also positively affecting other small business dreams of people in Prince Edward County and neighboring areas like Greater Napanee. You are positively affecting businesses like mine. We are an apiary that produces 100% raw Ontario honey, which Land and Bog will need in their restaurant. We also produce wood-fired artisan bread, which once again they will need in their restaurant. If rezoning is approved, Land and Bog, and it's finally permitted for Land and Bog to become a reality, it will greatly affect the success of many small businesses like mine. Let's face it, Land and Bog is a business that will do business with local butcher shops, bakeries, food suppliers, and the list goes on and on. Small businesses depend on each other, and by the support we show each other, it in turn creates success for all of us involved. I fear that if the rezoning application is not approved, then it will most certainly have a negative effect on not just Land and Bog, but on small businesses like my own. There's definitely going to be a snowball effect if it is not approved. Land and Bog is not a giant, uncaring corporation. Land and Bog is a business that two people are trying to make a reality on a family property that they purchased. Like my own business, it's a dream that involves a lot of sweat and tears, and it's a dream that can help the local area, not hurt it. I implore you this evening to take what I have to say into consideration, and please approve their rezoning application. Small businesses struggle daily, and small businesses just don't stay alive, because it's a very hard area to be in. Prince Edward County and surrounding areas need small businesses like this to help support small businesses like mine. So I thank you for your time, and I just ask you to please consider approving the application for the sake of small businesses in the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Any questions? Could you come back up,
Yeah.
Councillor Walk?
Thank you. Just a small point. I note you're appearing in a uniform.
Yes, I am.
Are you appearing as an individual or as a member?
I just got off a 12-hour shift,
Okay.
sir,
I just
and
wanted to
I
make
didn't have
sure-
time to go home to change. So
Yeah, just wanted
no,
to make
this has
sure-
nothing to do with this. I would like to retire from this with this small business. So
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Come on up.
My name is Edgar Ramirez. I have a business, farm business in Hillier, and I'm just standing here to support this project. Why? Because I grow grapes, I grow hops, and for us, a brewery, another brewery in the county will bring business to us. That's why I'm here to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Winnie? Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Come on up.
Chantal Jeffrey, owner of Tabor Snack. Of course, I support Land and Bog. Land and Bog has been using my food truck this past summer to start their business. And as per a letter that I sent earlier, it's time that we start to develop the west end of the county. Like it's the entrance of Toronto people arriving from there, and people are driving by, and yes, like Concession starts to be vibrant, and that's why like I believe that Tabor Snack was the best place to establish its business. And also like with their business project, I am using their products at the restaurant already, and we also have plans on doing some collaboration on different events that are coming for the upcoming year. So I truly believe that yes, it's time that we think that Concession can be put on the map, and it's good for all us new business owner to bring more population also in that end of the county. So I truly support their project.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from committee? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Okay, I think we need to get this motion put on the floor because I think there's going to be a few questions now. Who would like to put this on the floor? Councillor Markson, Councillor Nyman, could you just read it and then we'll move from there.
Got me set here. Okay, this is a Markson Nyman motion that the Markson Nyman motion that the supplemental report number 1 of Development Services dated December 11th, 2019 regarding zoning bylaw amendment file number Z32-19 be received. That the staff report of Development Services dated July 17th, 2019 regarding zoning bylaw amendment file number Z32-19 be rescinded. That the revised zoning bylaw amendment file number Z32-19 Brian Draycott and Laura McNeil for lands located in part lot 103 and 104 concession 5 as in PE 172949 parcel 1 Ward 7 Hillier be approved with the revised bylaw attached to this report.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm just going to start this before I hand it over to committee, and I'm going to ask Paul. I was feeling pretty good about this at the start of the night, and a little bit of a bombshell just dropped on us right here. So I guess I'd like a little bit of information on what was said and before the questions start.
I'll turn it over to Matt.
I think through the chair. So what's the question?
About the lady who came up about all the environmental issues. Yes. That was sort of, I wasn't counting on that tonight. And
so through the chair, we did receive that memo, and my apologies, I thought it had been included in the correspondence, and it was not. So we do apologize for that.
Anything you'd like to add to this right now? Because should we feel comfortable moving ahead at all right now until some of these things are addressed?
Well, so through the chair, we did spend quite a bit of, staff spent some time working with EagleView to massage the zoning bylaw so that it does address the concerns that were outlined in their memo. We're pretty confident that we have done that, and so I still think that we can move forward.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to committee now, and then Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along the same lines, I think this is a large package. It's been a long issue, a complicated issue. And I'd like to start out by saying that I think the applicants have done an admirable job of modifying their proposal since July to deal with things that came out of the open house and so on. When it comes to environmental concerns, and it's Councillor Markson who brought some of these to our attention just today, in fact, issues like the floodplain and so on are seriously important concerns. However, and the concerns of EcoView are important too. But as I read the proposed bylaw, and I think everybody needs to have done that, it appears to me that all these things are looked after. So really what I guess staff is saying to us, and I'll have a question and ask you to confirm that, is that a lot of this will have to be dealt with in the site plan control aspect of this, not just in the zoning bylaw. We don't have a blank sheet. We have a bylaw that has, in 2 places it says that no construction will happen within the 100-year floodplain. And so if the line we got today from Quinte Conservation is correct, some of the cabins are in the floodplain. So I guess they'll have to move. So the drawings with this package then aren't necessarily what's going to happen as long as the terms of the bylaw are indeed dealt with. Is that Paul, is that the correct way, or Matt, that we should be looking at this?
Through the chair, that's correct. We're not approving the site plan or the concept as it's presented. What we're approving is the zoning bylaw, which outlines the permitted uses and the provisions in the bylaw, which provide guidance as to what we need to look for if and when we approve a site plan agreement and remove the H off remove the holding symbol off the zone itself.
Okay, Councilor Markson.
So in fact, this question to Matt, then the concept plan is really irrelevant at this point.
Through the chair, I think it's a concept plan, so things will move around when they get into more detailed studies, and we acknowledge that the reports do not take it to that level. If things come up during the site plan process that requires things to be moved around, they will be done. That will be done, and so yeah, the concept could change at that point. We're not approving the concept tonight.
Follow up then?
Well, then, the setback from the side yard to address the neighbors concerned is not embedded in the bylaw right now. And the setback from the wetland you've put in there, it could change other than it's a minimum right now. And the sewage issues that were addressed, and I raised them at the first meeting, that we're going to be over 10,000 liters a day if you don't step this. That was based on the report that they provided. And then I had Quinte Conservation comments throughout that they had raised some issues that I thought might be addressed before this meeting today, such as the hydro-G, the location of the shore well, the floodplain, the wetland boundary. I just feel that those issues could have been addressed perhaps, but haven't been. And the way you're presenting it to me tonight is that really you can rezone this land. You wouldn't have to do any of those studies before because you can do them all now through the site plan control process. So it's a bit confusing for me, and it has been frustrating as well to understand what we're trying to approve here without having the information. So can you respond to me that on that, what do we do about the sewage if it's not a building code thing, and it's not going to be incremental when we're over 10,000 liters a day?
Yeah, so through the chair, I'm not a hydrogeological expert, so I don't want to get into that too much, other than to say that we can acknowledge that there's gaps in the studies that have been submitted. The comments for the Conservation Authority, I think, do speak for themselves. We don't have an updated hydro-G report. It would be nice if we did, but we don't. And so we have to ask ourselves, is the information in that report sufficient to approve the change of use? And then knowing that at the site plan stage, these concerns and these details will need to be sorted out. It's a 40-acre site, so there's plenty of room to address the issues if they arise. Staff are fairly comfortable that the reports, even though they're conceptual in nature, at least give some guidance to us that development is feasible on the site. I'm not sure if that answers all of your questions, but it would be nice to have more detail, but unfortunately at this time we don't. And is it sufficient enough to warrant a change of use at this time? We've recommended that it be approved, but it's up to council.
Anybody else?
Just further to the, through the chair, just further to the hydro-G issue, the hydro-G report acknowledges that under Section 8 of the Building Code Act, only domestic sewage gets approved, and only that if it's under 10,000 liters per day. Commercial, industrial discharges are approved by MOE. They have to identify the critical contaminant specific to that type of operation and then model that critical contaminant through dilution models or what have you. And commonly for a lot of the wineries and breweries, they end up trucking their waste from time to time. There's other options too, but ultimately that gets approved through environmental compliance approval of MOE, of course. So that's probably why that report doesn't go into a lot of those kind of details, because it's actually triggered by approval through another jurisdiction. Regarding the well, our understanding was that it was an existing shore well that they were attempting to utilize. How accurate that information is, I can't verify, but was our understanding there. Regarding EISs, ultimately, it comes down to the setback to a large extent. I'm sure the speaker can speak more authoritatively to that than I can. But at some point, when you have a very ample clearance for something, some of those concerns regarding adverse impacts on the features and functions of a wetland diminish significantly, particularly if you then, through site plan control, introduce mitigation measures as well, such as the controls on the erosion and that sort of thing, and better placement of buildings and downspouts and that sort of thing. So because of the ample setback of 50 meters, a full four-season assessment wasn't considered necessarily critical in determining the principle of land use at this stage. Not uncommonly, we would have lands already zoned for commercial use and no buildings and no proposal, in which case they could have a lot more than 10 buildings. So staff, acknowledging that, felt confident with a low density, maximum of 10 cabins, small gross floor areas, around 200 square feet, that the probability of adverse impacts would be diminishing significantly, particularly when we are asking for a supplemental report.
Councilor Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I will agree with the comment from our planner that it would have been certainly far more preferred if we had had more information, more accurate information, because I mean we would like to see that there's development on this property, but only if it's good development. Interestingly, this evening we had another application on page 31 of our agenda. It talked about the intent of the county policy. So tonight it's like, are we deciding policy? Are we not deciding policy? We get one comment from their agent, we're doing a zoning amendment and a site plan, but we're not really doing a site plan. We're just kind of putting some parameters on. So I find this, after 9 years, this one is complicated and unusual. We have, for the first time this evening, seen a different way of calculating MDS from barns that we have never used before. We've had some rationale for it, but because there was a building, a dry storage barn allowed to be built, I must say that it almost appears that we are, finding a way to reverse engineer this situation, because we have never before around this table used that reasonableness of that barn being used as in our MDS calculations. If it's been in effect for 2 years, we haven't used it in 2 years, and I'm sure there's some other applicants out there that would have been interested to use that same. So, for consistency's sake, I'll go back to what's on page 31. It says the intent of the policy to protect the shoreland from development that would compromise its environmental and ecological integrity. The predominant use of the land and shoreland designations will include low density residential, which does not preclude tourist commercial, but so we've got some conflicting policy statements, right? There's different things that come into play here. So I think all we're asking is that we have all the necessary information before us so that we, in good conscience, can know that there is a good chance of having a good building envelope. I will take exceptions to the comments about the hearsay, I would say, from Quinte Conservation, because I too have made that inquiry, and although there may have been some flagging for a shoreline well that was either installed or had been installed or it had some work done on it. It certainly is not certainly they have not flagged that property, and nor have they been asked to comment on the changes, because when it says in this report that there's no objections, well, I don't think that's really what the letter of, the June letter indicates. But I mean, they have not been asked to comment on this, on the revisions. So with that in mind, I don't want to deny this application, but I do think that we need to, and I'll let other people, I do think that we need to defer until we have all the information that we need to make a proper decision. I mean, we're doing a rezoning with an exceedingly large number of conditions to remove an H symbol, and I have no doubt that the applicants want to do the right thing, but this could at some point be bought by a large and uncaring corporation, and we need to protect ourselves, and we need to protect that lake against any eventualities that might come. If they put the cabins up where it's high and dry, I think that would be a good start.
Mayor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt and Paul, looking at the, based on what you said, we've still got a considerable amount of control as this moves forward over what exactly happens on this property. And it seems to be quite fluid. The schematic that was provided on page 150 is different from and it's dated October 22nd, is different from the schematic that was produced this evening. It's dated October 23rd in terms of orientation of the building. So I would expect that as this goes forward, we're going to likely see certain amendments and changes along those lines, but nothing fundamental or as radical as additional buildings. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the bylaw specifies the number of cabins. It specifies the square footage of the brewery and smokehouse. So no, there would be no additional cabins. What could happen is the buildings could move around depending on the outcome of those studies that where more detail is required.
Okay, well, the proponents have been quite reasonable in addressing the concerns of the public that were raised at the public meeting. So, I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't similarly listen to, additional concerns as they're raised.
Yeah, and through the chair, the process following this, if it were to be approved, would require another pre-consultation meeting with the applicant and their agents to further define the terms of reference, to revise their studies. Those studies would form part of a site plan control application, which would then be brought back to council for final approval.
Okay, just a quick follow. Yeah, I just want to make sure that everything that has been raised tonight has been and will be considered before it gets to that point coming back.
Councilor Roberts.
Thanks, Jimmy. Chair. My question's to Paul. I agree with the comments made that this part of the county requires and is long overdue with regard to innovative development, and I'm encouraged by innovative development which is environmentally sensitive, although we seem to be living in a conversation of paradox at the moment, but that's the impression I get. So, and Land and Bog seems to do just that, and I support it. But if it's confusing for us around the horseshoe here, it must be bloody bewildering for anybody trying to watch this thing on streamed video. information gaps, lack of information, studies that are out of date, et cetera. We now, in my view, for me personally, we move to a position of trust. And that is, can staff assure council that if we approve this change of use, that we will, through various processes, including the site plan control, deal with all of the issues and concerns that have been raised this evening, and assure council that all those issues will be addressed, all those studies will be done, and if that is the case, then I will vote and support this land and bog application. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, I can confirm that there will be that, all that follow-up by staff through the subsequent dialogue with the proponents, their agents doing the EIS, et cetera, and the hydrology information, and finally implemented through the site plan control agreement.
Thank you, and I'll support it.
Councillor McNaughton.
Thank you. I'm still fairly new at this, so I still don't, really know what's been typically done over many years, but I'm quite uncomfortable with the question marks that I have remaining. It does seem like a very long bylaw, and I would prefer to have some of those question marks be answered before I vote to rezone, and have them off the bylaw and already settled and those questions answered in advance. Is that not typical? Does this not seem unduly lengthy? The bylaw, I mean, the requirements in the bylaw?
Through the chair, it's not uncommon to have a lengthy bylaw with requirements for that outline what is required to remove a holding symbol or a site, or what the requirements would be for a site plan control agreement. This is a unique application. We haven't seen a lot of applications like this, so I can understand why there'd be questions about it and lots of back and forth about how do certain issues get addressed. Like Spencer was saying earlier, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg. What level of detail do you put into the studies prior to justifying a change of use? There's quite a cost to these studies, especially if you get into detailed work. So we've been flexible on that. So it depends on the level of comfort, I think, with everybody, and staff have indicated that we're fairly confident that, or we are confident that through the site plan control agreement, these conditions or these issues will be addressed. So.
I've heard that it's been said several times. I still think I would feel more comfortable if, we had a severance tonight that had ground truth was the phrase, I believe, a survey to actually look at where the actual parameters are. We still have some discrepancy here, and we've got a number of people saying different things. For me, that's a source of concern. Perhaps that isn't for you. I think I might I think I might need some of those question marks sort of fulfilled before I can see my way into voting for this.
Is there anybody else before I go back to Councillor Maynard?
I have to ask, see.
You have another one? Okay.
Matt, is the draft zoning bylaw that you have on the screen, is that the same one that we have?
It is, yes.
So there's been no changes?
No.
Okay. And the setback from the side yard that has increased the distance from the neighbor who had some objections, that's not embedded in your draft zoning bylaw, and I know I talked to you about that. Would that be something that should be included so that it is addressing their, or do we now believe the concept site plan in regard to that portion of it?
Through the chair, right now the parent bylaw in the TC zone has a setback of, I believe it's 15 meters. The concept is showing 55.6. To solidify that as a requirement, it would have to be included in the bylaw. There's no particular reason why it wasn't included. We could add it in. It would not impact our position or our opinion.
Well, I see it as an important part of what we're talking about here, but it isn't. Yeah, this is the thing with this concept plan. Some parts of it we want to accept, and some, and the way your actual zoning map is in the schedule, you know, some of the cabins are in the wetland, the way M&R defined it right now, and in the floodplain, the way the Conservation Authority. And I hear what Councillor Roberts and others said. Can we do this later? Can we address the Conservation Authority comments? It's winter now. Can we address them and give us a chance to have the information to make us feel comfortable? Like I'm going to support getting that, just a little bit more comfort on that our site plan is at least showing conceptually. And I know there won't be any more buildings, but I feel it's important.
So through the chair, yes, adding that provision to the bylaw would be appropriate. It would answer that first question about, further defining that building envelope. The second part of your comment about deferring the application, I believe that's kind of the direction we were going. Like I said at the start, it would have been nice to have updated studies to present to council tonight, and we don't have them. We don't have an updated comment from the Conservation Authority. If council would feel more comfortable at that point having that information, we can certainly go back to the applicant and request that information.
Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to make sure I'm following along. So by approving this, nothing can really happen until they come back with everything that's been brought up tonight, all the questions and everything. So that's been answered. And then with the outdated information, everything else, we're going to get updated information before we can take the holding symbol off. Is that my understanding?
Through the chair, yes, there would be an additional staff report would come back to the committee of the whole, and there would be a recommendation to support the site plan based on the updated studies and any recommendations that come out of those studies. And then there would be a second bylaw presented to council to remove the holding symbol. That's kind of the process.
So we're going to get all the updated information that we're missing, all the information that's missing right now, that there's lots.
That's correct.
We're going to get that before anything happens?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Maynard, I'm going to come back to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, recognizing that it is winter and the weather will prevent any significant development, we have some time to address some of the concerns, and I will take the comments of our staff that, that it's, if we defer this till that we receive some of the missing information, some of the missing links, or to verify some stuff, I think that is a prudent move. So we'll put it, and we are now starting to get into the territory where we are trying to make additions or deletions to the bylaw on the fly, which we've indicated is not good practice. So if I have a seconder, and I would expect that this deferral to be a fairly short one, that we defer this for staff to allow staff time to gather the information that answer some of the questions that have been answered tonight, and bring it back at the earliest opportunity.
I'll second it. You have a seconder, Councillor Markison?
Speak to it.
Sure.
Short deferral.
Yes.
Get Quinte Conservation comments and put the, like you said, we'll Quinny Conservation comments, and what was the second thing?
Well, I know that you had some...
Oh, the wording, sorry, the wording of the bylaw to recognize that you've met the conditions or the complaints from the neighbor about moving this development further from their property line. That's a fairly simple change to the bylaw, but thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote.
Wait. All right. Through you, Mr. Chair, so would this require a supplementary report from staff? I'm asking planning staff. So then it would be a referral, because we're asking for supplemental information to be delivered. So instead of a deferral, it'll be a referral. And we're not going to put a time limit on it, just when staff can come back with the information.
Yes, I ask as soon as feasibly possible.
Okay. So you're okay without a time limit on it? Yes. Okay. That's right. It's referral. Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure. We're asking for a referral, but we're going to get the same information with the holding symbol if we pass it tonight, are we not? Or am I missing something?
Through the chair, there'll be a couple changes. One would be a revision to the bylaw to include a provision for a side yard setback of 55.6 meters. The second thing requires a recirculation to Quinny Conservation, and there might be some additional work there that the applicant will have to do to provide that enough information for Quinny Conservation to make a second comment. And we don't know what that is at this time.
So the second comment is if we refer it back or if we pass it with the holding symbol? Where's the second comment coming from?
They would be circulated on the site plan application, yes.
So we're going to get the same information if we pass it with the holding symbol as we would by referring it back to staff. Only we're not getting 3 reports, we're only going to get 2. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Everybody clear?
No, I'm not. Other than the bylaw won't be amended if we pass it tonight to recognize the setback. That other than the bylaw wouldn't be amended.
The bylaw would not be amended, correct.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to call the vote here on the referral.
Should I read it?
Do you want to read it? Well, I thought it was clear. I don't think we need it read again. All in favor of the referral, put up your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so that's defeated.
Okay, the main motion.
Okay, so now I'm going to read the motion as is. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that passes with 2/3. Okay. Finished. Well, that was interesting. Within 15 days of council's decision, a notice of decisions will be mailed out as prescribed, advertising of the decision, the conditions, if any, and the date of which the 20-day appeal period to local planning appeal tribunal expires. If no appeals are received, council's decision is final. Any person who wishes to receive notice of decision of councils must submit a written request to the council or to the municipal clerk or sign in sheet. Okay, at this point, I will ask for a mover and a seconder to move back into sitting as regular council. Councillor Markison, Councillor St. Jean, all in favor? Mr. Mayor, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That will move us to item 7, adoption of committee of the whole recommendations. And we have, could I have a motion to adopt, moving a second to that, please? Councillor Margetson, seconded by Councillor McNaughton.
Margetson, McNaughton, motion. that the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole agenda items, which received 2/3 majority in favor of the staff recommendation, being items 5.1 to 5.7, be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? That carries. 8, item 8 is no deferral or referral. So that moves us to item 9, bylaws for consideration. If it could have a mover and a seconder for this, please. Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Harper.
This is a Bailey-Harper motion that the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bylaw 9.1.1, 9.1.2, 9.1.3, 9.1.4, 9.1.5, and 9.1.6.
Thank you. All those in favor?
On the bylaws?
Question? Councillor?
So Councillor Margetson had what he was trying to make an amendment, but I just, to 9.1.6, because we know that this will be the only time that can come into effect is when we read this bylaw. That, I mean, we can say, yeah, we're going to hold symbol, but I don't know. I just wanted to stop for a pause to see if this is the appropriate time to amend that, a few words in that bylaw.
So what, and what amendment are you proposing, Councillor?
I'm not. I pulled it for discussion because I don't have the wording, but I know that there is, to the left of me, someone does have the wording.
Okay. Questions? Sorry. Questions? Councillor Margetson.
Well, the amendment she's speaking to, Councillor Maynard, was to amend the side yard setback from 15 meters minimum to 55.6 meters minimum as proposed by the proponent.
Through the mayor, if I may offer a friendly amendment to the zoning bylaw. I know we try and refrain from doing policy on the fly, but I think this is very specific and acknowledged in the concept plan that there be insertion in the bylaw listed in 9.1.6 that would insert a Roman numeral 2A after Roman numeral 2 to read minimum setback of from the westerly lot line to the nearest point of any cabin or other building shall be 55.6 meters.
Okay. Is that okay with you? Councillor Maynard?
Well, I didn't put the motion on, I just pulled the bylaw for discussion.
That's fine with me.
Is that okay?
So when we say friendly amendment, that's just sorry, that's a staff recommendation now? Okay. And if I could, because now we are working with the bylaw, yes, so because we're talking about the bylaw now specifically, on the, well, it's on page 174, but it talks about appropriate mitigation measures to ensure the design and location of the proposed development, including boardwalks, docking. I would really be more comfortable if we had some language that indicated that there would not be development within the boundaries of the provincially significant wetland, that there is no development in the boundaries of that provincially significant wetland or the within so many meters of the floodplain, which...
To the mayor, perhaps that could
Go ahead,
be,
Paul.
Yeah, there might be other provisions similar to that following from the final EIS recommendations and conclusions, so there might be more than just that would come forward through the final approved site plan and the provisions of the agreement. So that right now these things read as a minimum. We can be more constraining as we drill down into the details.
So to ensure that, we could leave that wording and say we'll meet provincial policy and legislation and recommendations that may come forward. Like, I just want something, because as this reads now, it's pretty open for development in... We're passing a bylaw.
I'm asking the mayor what we're doing.
The Councillor Maynard has raised amendments to the bylaw. Madam Clerk, can you provide some guidance here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we made a friendly amendment as per staff's request to add that setback minimum, and now Councillor Maynard is talking about extra provisions to the bylaw referencing environmental protection. I'm not sure if that needs to be specific wording added to the bylaw or if it's something that can be addressed under site plan control.
So that's what I'm asking for clarification. I'm just thinking that this is worded fairly weakly, and I'm just looking for some
So clarification of language?
Some clarification of language and possibly some slight strengthening of that language to indicate what staff's intention seems to be.
The staff's intention there is that the EIS conclude that there are no adverse impacts on the features or functions of the provincially significant wetland, while recognizing that there might be an access point in there, such as shown on the photos by the RFA consultant Spencer Hutchinson. So it's a design detail. We won't capture all the design details in the wording of the bylaw.
Okay. Okay, so if we could call the vote on this, please. All those in favor? That carries. Item 10, the confirmatory bylaw. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Nyman? 10. Councillor Roberts.
That the following bylaw be, it's a Nyman Roberts motion, that the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time and finally passed. A bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Planning Public Council of the Corporation of the County of Prince Edward at the meeting held on December 11th, 2019.
Thank you. All those in favor? That carries. And motion to adjourn. Mover, Councillor St. Jean, seconded by Councillor Bullock.
Thank you, Your Worship. St. Jean Bullock motion that this meeting now adjourn at 9:17 p.m.
All those in favor? Thank you.
I bought a bunch of Sprague beans from Big Island at a church auction, so you're getting a can.